First off, as everybody who's here today knows, fundraising is really, really hard. People who don't do it every day have no idea how hard it is to have these audacious goals for raising money and then have perhaps your C-suite or your board, no matter how much you raise, say, do more next year. The burnout rate for development folks is very high as a result. The friction has been that giving online has had a lot of barriers to it, a lot of places to sign up. If, in particular, you may have a way that you want to give, maybe it's stocks or Venmo or PayPal, however you want to give, that the cause doesn't accept. And it's can be a very clunky experience. So as a result of the need for organizations to raise money has created a transactional approach to fundraising, right? Those are the emails that go out and out and out. Yesterday was Giving Tuesday. In all likelihood, the 40 people here had their inboxes stuffed with emails yesterday asking people to give. And the fact is that if somebody gives, they have less than a 25% chance of giving again, a second time, to that organization. And if they don't give that second time, Svetlana, they have a 4% chance of coming back, right? So this transactional approach to fundraising has been very, very off-putting to donors. And this creates what I call the leaky bucket problem. You get 100 donors in year one. By the time you get to year two, you have 22, 23 people left. Creates a panic inside organizations. You do the same thing over again. And now we're in this whirlpool of frantically trying to fill up this leaky bucket again. So the reason why I joined Every.org last year as president is I think our platform is taking a very different approach to fundraising. And ultimately, we're trying to get organizations to pivot from that transactional approach to a much more relational approach. And I think we can do that at scale, right? The same kind of storytelling you do for a very high-end donor, the number of touches you give, the feeling to them that they are super important to your cause, not just an ATM machine to you, which I hope is what you're trying to do. We're going to aim to do that at scale for donors, and in particular, aiming for a next generation of donors. So with that, let me go ahead and show you the site and what we're trying to achieve there. So can you see my screen? Okay, so this is Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. We love them. They've been on for a long time. Here is their page on our site. And so we're doing two things at Every.org. We have a platform. This is part of our platform where thousands of causes are creating campaigns and attracting donors. We also have a donate button on their website that they can use as well. And it is all free. There are no setup charges. There are no transaction fees here. We're funded by foundations like the Gates Foundation, Fidelity, Camp.org. Garrett Camp is our chair. He's the co-founder of Uber. And we're funded by voluntary tips by donors on the back end. So we are not, unlike most every other donation software or processor, we're not funded by creating a toll booth of transactions, again, trying to get out of that transactional mindset. So in this case, you can see that the cause can share information about itself, and it can create fundraisers and campaigns. And when people go to donate to these campaigns, they have all of these different ways of giving. We're actually set up a little bit technical here, but we're set up as a donor advised fund, meaning people pay us we turn that payment into dollars and send the dollars and donors directly to a nonprofit. So a nonprofit never touches, say, crypto. We immediately turn that into dollars. So for small organizations in particular, it is enormously helpful to be able to accept all of these payment methods without having to do any of the financial or the legal steps that you have to do to accept that. And we hear often from organizations that stocks in particular, it's enormously helpful to smaller organizations to be able to accept, say, stocks. So this is what the platform looks like for one cause, for one donor. This is my giving page, right? You can list out all of the causes that you've given to. And we provide the tax information, the tax receipt immediately for donors immediately upon giving. And I can share with the world what I've given to. And we know the future of giving is about sharing. People like sharing what they've given to. And it's enormously powerful for organizations like the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund to enable a person to start their own fundraiser, right? To create a peer-to-peer fundraiser for them. So I'm going to stop sharing there for a second. And I do want to touch on Giving Tuesday because it happened yesterday. It's Wednesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. And share a few thoughts about that as well. The things that are working well. So Giving Tuesday is an enormously huge day. It's raising billions of dollars around the world. It's also a very, very crowded day if you're a fundraiser. The things that are working well right now are match campaigns, and there were a bunch of very large ones yesterday. For instance, Global Giving had $1 million match yesterday. It doesn't have to be $1 million. Smaller matches also are very compelling for folks. And the peer-to-peer fundraising is working as well. I want to raise X amount of dollars for my cause, and I reach out to my friends to do that. What isn't working is the onslaught of the emails yesterday, as I started by saying, all of our inboxes were stuffed. It's not working to last minute email people out about your cause. And that's the pivot that we need to make from being transactional to being relational, right? We need to back up and think about what is it that makes our cause sticky with people? Where and how are we moving their hearts, not just their minds, which as a field, we've not been very good at over time. I know you've been talking about storytelling in your sessions. And we really need to think about why is it that this cause can move people to give, which is a huge action, and moreover, enable them to become ambassadors for a cause, right? That's what networks are about. The network effect is about people raising money for you, where you don't have to spend any money to do it. That's the goal in this. And that's the future of fundraising. So I'll stop right there and pass it back to you to introduce the next person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I think you touched upon some really important things, especially around Giving Tuesday, but also about, moving away from transactional relationships. I think that's super vital. And perhaps we can go a little bit into that in the Q&A. And if anyone has any questions already, feel free to drop them in the chat. Specifically ones that are for Allison, but maybe even more broader topics around digital platforms. So now we're going to go to our next speaker, which is Adel Chowdhury. He's head of business development for Europe and Middle East and Africa at LaunchGood, which is one of the largest faith-based crowdfunding platforms in the world. And since its launch in 2013, LaunchGood has raised over $500 million from approximately 1.5 million donors across 153 countries. That is really impressive. And the platform has hosted nearly 70,000 campaigns, which has led to significant impact across various communities around the world. So we'd love to hear about LaunchGood and the value added of your platform and perhaps some of the successful campaigns that have been launched on LaunchGood. It'd be great to hear more about that. Adel, over to you.
Thank you so much, Svetla, and thank you, Alison, as well for your presentation. I think there are going to be some similarities to the messages that we give, but welcome, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're from. I'm here in London, but it's so nice to see so many different people from around the world in the chat. I do have some slides, so I'm going to try and share them now. I'm not a designer, so they're pretty basic, but we'll make do, hopefully. Bear with me one moment. All right. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. So as Svetla mentioned, I'm from LaunchGood, and we're the largest Muslim or faith-based Muslim crowdfunding platform in the world. And, very similar to what Alison was saying before, the industry is moving towards sort of zero platform fee model where we rely, like many others, on donor tips. So more funds go to the campaign creators and the charities and the fundraisers than previously. I'm based in the UK, but we have a global team. So I've got colleagues in the UK, Malaysia, Canada, Australia, the USA, Lebanon, and many other countries that are around the world. However, LaunchGood started very, very local. Not local to me in London, but local to our founders in Detroit about 10 years ago. And the idea behind LaunchGood was to connect local community projects, so people working on the ground in Detroit, to a global community of givers, because the world is generous and there is a lot of money around the world, especially in the West and where we're from, and it's just about being that bridge to connect those that have funds to the people on the ground doing really important work. And in the past 10 years, that snowballed into becoming, one of the largest faith-based crowdfunding platforms, not just for individuals or local causes, but causes around the world, from Palestine to, Plymouth in the UK, charities to individuals to community groups to mosques and places of worship and everything in between. And as Svetla mentioned, we have had a great journey of growth up to now. We've crossed $500 million, but our next site is to support the community around the world by raising $1 billion through the platform. But a little bit about our donors. So I mentioned LaunchGood is primarily faith-based or entrenched in Muslim values, but we have donors from around the world, from your celebrities in Hollywood to even the likes of Jack Dorsey, former CEO of Twitter, and J.K. Rowling even. I believe one day she promoted LaunchGood campaign and the amount of traffic crashed the site. And this was a few years ago. We're a bit more advanced now, but we appreciate people around the world and the support they give to causes that matter to them. But just a quick snapshot, courtesy of Google Analytics, most of our donors are the millennial or Gen Z generation, usually college educated or beyond, and they have have an income of $100,000 or more per year. So these are people that are educated, they're young, they're in the digital mobile generation, and they have disposable income. And so LaunchGood is essentially a one-stop shop where they can find causes that matter to them. This is where my design skills kind of fell through, but just a few benefits or features of the platform. Like I've mentioned, and over the past 10 years, we have a global audience of 1.6 million users that interact with LaunchGood, either as a campaign creator or a donor. However, aside from the tech and the website and the platform, we have a team of campaign coaches and expert fundraisers that will sit with you, whether you're an individual, a charity, a community group, and plan a digital fundraising strategy where we can use the tools that LaunchGood provide, but ultimately it's about tailoring our advice to your objectives, your goals, what you need to raise, and how you can best leverage the tools you have, whether it's your audience, your own website, your mailers, as well as digital marketing through our LaunchGood services and the platform itself. I think Alison mentioned the importance of peer-to-peer fundraising. That's been such a huge growth area, especially in the UK and Europe. with people leveraging not just the audience of a charity, but charities leveraging the audiences of their supporters and their ambassadors, accessing new networks. So me, my friends, their friends and family, and building their donor base that way. And LaunchGood supports that through a variety of different campaign pages, team pages, and gamification as well with leaderboards. You know, we took part along with many others in Giving Tuesday yesterday, and so much of what we were trying to do was around gamification and building that hype and that intensity to encourage people to give, not just in general, but to give now to this particular cause due to the incentives and the leaderboards that we had. And that's something that we try and do regularly throughout the year. So Giving Tuesday being one of the highest sort of fundraising days in our calendar. And the final thing is we pride ourselves on industry-leading compliance to build that donor trust and transparency. So one of the things you'll find with every campaign or project on LaunchGood is they've been verified manually for the most part, or through our AI and tools to ensure that the campaigns are authentic, that the funds are going where they're supposed to be going, all with the aim of building that donor trust and ensuring that there's transparency, so people can trust LaunchGood with their donations, and ultimately they'll go to the right place, which is a growing concern, especially when we have so many horrific tragedies around the world. And so many people want to give, but they're looking for safe places to give, where they know that those pounds and those dollars are going to go where they intended it to go. And I did want to give one example of a really successful campaign that we had yesterday. And this was part of Giving Tuesday. I'm sure many of you are aware of what's happening in Palestine. And whilst we always turn on the news, whether it's CNN, BBC, social media, what's happening there is horrific on any humanitarian lens. But what we really try and focus on are some of the individual stories and some of the success stories that might come out of very, very dark circumstances. And so we worked with a campaign creator called Afaf, who you might be aware of. She's been vlogging and very regularly posting on social media about the situation on the ground. Unfortunately, her and her group of friends and her team of about 30 people worked in a studio called One Studio, where they would work on creative projects and their own campaigns and whatnot. However, that was damaged and destroyed in the conflict. And so this campaign was about rebuilding their studio and providing those jobs and opportunities back to her and her team. So uplifting people in very, very difficult circumstances. And if my hyperlink works, I do want to take you to their page. And this was an idea literally 2 days ago. So the day before Giving Tuesday, out of a conversation. But so much of the campaign page focused less on the facts and the figures that we hear on the news and on social media every day, but more on some of the personal stories, the friendships, the bonds that this studio created, and how it was so important to them. So that's a slightly different narrative that we might have been exposed to. And through Giving Tuesday, they were able to raise, over $143,000 just in one day. And, that's amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but they were able to do that through a few key strategies. Number one, it was public interest. What everybody is aware of what's going on through the news or through the media or social media. But number two, a really personal story. This was something deeply connected to Afaf. It was her team, it was her work. And, the people that in this picture look like many of us that we could immediately relate to. And none of them chose to be in the circumstances that they were in. But people like us and like you around the world can lend a helping hand to help them rebuild, their lives and their creative dreams ultimately. But something that was really important behind this campaign was the impact of social media. Afaf herself, she has, a number of or growing social media audience. She teamed up with Maya Hussein, people like Sean King, Imam Omar Suleiman, and they would leverage the tools that Instagram, for the most part, provided them with posts, reels, live streams, just building that momentum, focusing less on the fundraising at the start, but just letting people know their story and their project and getting that emotional attachment to what they wanted to do first, and then coming in with the call to action to support and help. And we found, their followers to be incredibly generous, raising, the bulk of this $143,000. However, that was coupled with some of the LaunchGood incentives and the match fundings that we were able to provide as well. So we had leaderboards for every campaign around the world, if they were to raise the most amount of money in that day or have the highest number of supporters, because not everyone can give great amounts, but everyone or almost everyone can give something. So we had rewards and matches on offer for both. And this campaign ended up first in our global leaderboard, beating some, international brands and charities who have much bigger reach and more tools at their disposal. And they will be receiving a match of another $25,000 because of it. And that match was something that was able to incentivize and galvanize the audience, the followers, the well-wishers to give today or give yesterday, as opposed to tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And that's in line with, what many platforms have been doing for Giving Tuesday. But I did want to show this as a very recent example and a success story. And, messaging Afaf, she only has electricity every now and then, it cuts in and out, but she was so grateful for how the community came together. And she was passing thanks to me, but really we were just the middlemen or the middlewomen, the platform or that bridge, just like we were 10 years ago, connecting donors to Detroit. Now we're connecting, well-wishers and supporters to a fantastic creative project in Gaza. So that's one example. But of course, I think I was asked to mention what we've been doing with the UNDP. Obviously, many of you are familiar with the UNDP's Tadammun program, and we've been able to support a number of different CSOs and smaller impact-based charities with their digital marketing over the past couple of years. And I hope that continues for many years to come. Now, aside from those examples, I do want to share some other tips. And, some of this might not be new to you. Other speakers may be touching upon this as well. But just as an emphasis or a reminder, it's really important that when we talk about fundraising or crowdfunding campaigns, we focus on the impact and we tailor our titles, our imagery, our stories, our price handles and giving levels to the impact of that donation, not the means of that donation. What do I mean by that? Let's say you're charity X or Y and you're delivering a food campaign this winter. So you might have in your mind or within your organization, this is our winter food aid campaign or winter food aid appeal. And it's very easy and tempting to name your digital campaign the same as your project. However, that doesn't connect me as a donor to the person that's going to be fed, halfway around the world. And so if we were to flip the switch and then refocus a title like that to something like feed 20,000 Syrian refugees this winter. So the donor or the user or the visitor on your page knows within 1 second exactly where their pounds and dollars and euros are going to go without even having to read the rest of their page, because not everyone has the time or the attention span to go through lots and lots of text. So it's really important that immediately the first thing they see is the impact. And I think, like Allison mentioned before, and I'm sure you've all heard, stories resonate much more than facts and figures. We hear facts and figures every day, and it's a very corporate and business and commercial minded way of presenting data, and it has its use. However, donating is not a business decision. It's an emotional decision. When people give, they decide primarily over with their emotions over even sometimes their finances. My mum, every time she goes to a charity fundraising dinner, she's always raising her hands, whether she's got the money or not, because she's making that emotional decision. And so it's really important we focus on the stories that help us resonate with the people that we're trying to help. People that look just like us, that have stories similar to us. They've just found themselves in a different circumstance, and that makes us feel much stronger about the cause than facts and figures and dates and numbers and whatnot. But of course, along with the text and the titles, it's really important that we have strong imagery. Again, that connects to the impact. But what we've found at LaunchGood is that positive imagery does far more in terms of fundraising than negative imagery. Now, of course, most people and most of you in the charity sector are dealing with very horrific circumstances or very disadvantaged people. However, the focus is on what you can do with the donations, how you can change that person's environment or their circumstances. You know, the smiles on children's faces as they're having a warm meal, rather than the tears of hunger that we all know about. And because giving is a very emotional act, there is that feel-good factor with the donor, and we found that to be a very powerful force in online fundraising. And the next piece of advice I would give is, nowadays fundraising isn't simple. You know, we all know there's no one size fits all. You know, I'll send an email and the money will just come flowing in. We have to leverage all of the tools available to us, whether they're digital tools, you know, marketing agencies or platforms, our own mailers and newsletters and our own audience, perhaps social media influencers. You know, they're becoming more and more powerful forces in online fundraising. But like Allison said as well, volunteers, peer-to-peer fundraising, accessing donors that you might not already have exposure to. And the last thing I would mention will be user shares. So much of fundraising is about giving, donate. However, we found at LaunchGood, a share by a donor usually raises more in terms of average amounts than the donation itself. What do I mean by that? So if I found a great cause, let's say feed 20,000 Syrian refugees this winter, I donated £20 or £25. My share on average will raise 3 times that amount. And that's by sharing on my social media or to my audience. And there are tools and buttons that allow you to do that across multiple platforms. In fact, one of the world's largest fundraising platforms, not LaunchGood, they have a share button visible on their page 3 times and a donate button once. And that tells us everything we need to know about the power of user sharing and peer-to-peer functionality. And the final thing I'll say, because I know I've been speaking a lot, is feedback to donors. What happens after they've donated? And by giving strong feedback, impactful feedback, personal stories and testimonials, you can turn those one-time donors into lifelong supporters. And you never know which of those donors could end up becoming, you know, a high net worth, or even providing their skills to this project. There was one campaign I was working on with a team of doctors who were performing prosthetic operations in Iraq, and through their fundraising, other doctors and people with those specialist skills, not only did they donate, but they wanted to donate their skills, their time, and go out on the field. And that's an added benefit to the fundraising itself. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to share. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them in the Q&A section. But over to you, Svetlana, and thank you very much again for having me.
Thank you so much, Adel, for this wonderful presentation. First of all, sharing about LaunchGood and the community that's behind LaunchGood. I think that's really powerful. And thank you for sharing tips about what makes a campaign great. I completely agree with all those, with all the points that you mentioned. Really important in the way we approach fundraising overall. And now I want to go to our third speaker. And if there are any questions in the meantime, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to proceed with our third speaker, Nabil Barbir, Partnerships in Civil Society Organization Relationships Manager at Love Beirut, which is an amazing digital platform in Lebanon. They mainly work on campaigns in Lebanon, but we've heard a little bit about global digital giving platforms, but I think it's really important also to talk about the really powerful local platforms that are sometimes, when we're thinking about what platforms to trust and so forth, in this case, we can learn a little bit more from Nabil and Love Beirut about what they have built. He himself has been a diplomat, a crisis management volunteer, project manager, and through his experiences, basically has created a new approach to resolving Lebanon's challenges. So we're going to hear a bit more about Love Beirut and what they're doing and how they're also mobilizing the community.
Thank you, Svetla. I'm trying to resolve the challenges.
Yes, there are always challenges.
But thank you very much for having us on the platform on this discussion. I'm really honored to be among this panel. We're not nearly as big as the rest of you, but I mean we're learning as much as everyone else, I guess. So it's really a pleasure to be here. Just quickly, I'll give you a quick introduction about Live Love. We're a local civil society organization, an NGO, founded back in 2012, that originally worked mostly on digital activations, you know, trying to help the community promote Lebanon's communities, Lebanon's culture, and Lebanon's environment, using our social media platforms mostly. Since 2019, I don't know if many of you know, but we've been in a series of crises that have been sweeping the country, that culminated in a huge explosion on August 4th, 2020. And since then, honestly, it's been pretty much downhill. So what we're trying to do is that today, since we're in this crisis situation and the government hasn't been able, the role of civil society has increased tremendously and has become much more important. So that's when we thought it might be a good idea to launch a crowdfunding platform to a trustworthy, you know, but people know us here, they trust us, and we thought it might be a good thing to do. So we launched the Live Love funds back in April 2021, so it hasn't been that long, as a means of raising funds for people affected by these many crises, as well as the explosion. So it's a crowdfunding platform that focuses mostly on humanitarian and local development projects. We work to offer CSOs, so civil society organizations, the platform and the tools they need to fund themselves and continue their good work. So in a nutshell, if you like, sorry, I haven't had time to prepare a presentation, so I'll just talk about it if you don't mind. The process is really simple, you know, to start a campaign on our platform. It's very simple. You go to the livelovebeirut.com website, press on the donate button, and that takes you straight to several options. You can check out all the funds. You can start your own fund as well. So after you create a quick profile, you get the opportunity to set up your fund. So you put up the photos, the videos, the infographics, the text, whatever you want to have on there, and submit it to us. It's a really straightforward and simple process. After which we get back to you with a detailed feedback about the platform, the campaign, as well as a list of documents that we would require in order to move forward. You know, a little bit of due diligence just to make sure that everything is above the line. So now that's in my opinion, at least, I think that's the beauty of Live Love, is that it's really a one-on-one approach. You know, since we're not that big, we really try to give as much as we can attention, you know, to our different crowdfunders. So we'll take meetings, as many as it takes, to really perfect the campaign, to make sure that you've got everything that you need on there, and that's all the main information, keeping in mind everything that the previous speakers talked about. You know, storytelling, making sure that it's impactful, that the focus is on impact, etc. So once the platform is ready to go, we launch. And here there's something that we offer that is beneficial, I think, to people that work with us, is that we immediately share these stories, the launch of this campaign, on our social media platforms. Now, we've been like we have quite a few followers on social media, which means it is quite an impactful way of working. We're talking over 900,000 on one account, and we've got about 300 of those accounts. So all in all, we're talking about around 1 billion impressions per year. So that's quite impactful and can help a lot. But as mentioned before, it's not an easy thing to do to you know, set up a crowdfunding campaign. It's not just about setting up the campaign, posting it on the website, on the platform, and then waiting for the money to just rain down. You know, there's a lot of more work to do, even if we give that extra push to make sure that things are moving quickly from the beginning. So anyone can open a campaign. As I said, we're focused on mostly humanitarian or local development projects, or that kind of thing. But we've been looking more and more towards growth in the region and not just in Lebanon. Anyone can open a fund. There are no caps or limits on the funds. Whatever you raise is what you get, minus a small fee that we're trying to go towards a no fee like everyone else. But as you know, it's not an easy thing to do. But it should be mentioned that this is not a for-profit venture. This is really to help us keep the NGO alive, keep us working basically, and trying to deliver the public services that our government hasn't been able to. So that's mainly it. It's kind of a social enterprise kind of approach. So yeah, once the campaign is done, you have a time limit that you set yourself. We usually come up with recommendations based on the type of campaign we're talking about. You can get your funds through a bank transfer or directly in cash at our offices. I don't know if you might be aware, but we're going through a major crisis in terms of the financial system in Lebanon. So access to dollars has been quite difficult with a huge devaluation of the currency. So that in itself has been quite beneficial to a lot of people we're working with, especially that a lot of people on our social media platforms live abroad. So those donations coming into the country are really, really helpful. All right. So another thing that we tried to do in order to address some of the issues that were mentioned before in terms of keeping that, retaining the donor and making sure that they do give again, is that we've given the option of having a monthly donation as opposed to a one-time donation. You have the option to do both, but we try to highlight as much as possible how much more impactful a monthly donation would be to any of the campaigns that we're doing. Some of them it's more relevant than others, of course, but yeah, that's been a pretty successful point as well. Now, there's one extra element that LiveLove offers, and I think this has been touched on by the previous speakers as well in regards to the network effect. So we give the option of championing a cause. So basically, by looking at our platform, you find so you're there, you're donating or whatever, and you're simply browsing, for example. There's one of the campaigns that really move you and that makes you think that, okay, you'd like to participate more than just a simple donation. So what you can do there is create a sub-fund for any of the pre-existing funds that we have on the platform. So what really happens is that you create a sub-fund, which is a separate campaign that will feed into this main campaign, but you get to promote it and campaign for it in your own way, however you like, by setting up your own campaign, putting up a new picture, if you like, a new title, and sharing it across your network as well. This has been quite successful because it turns it into kind of a game as well. So you've got that gamification aspect also where people can compete. You know, we've had companies start a campaign and different members of these companies go out and champion that cause to see who raises more money than the others, etc. So that's been also a good innovation, I think, in terms of the opportunities you have on the LiveLove platform. Finally, I'll add just one thing, which is our experience with UNDP, specifically with Tadamun, just as Adel was talking about. We've had two very successful experiences with Tadamun, one in Lebanon, where we worked with the public sector, we worked with municipalities, giving them capacity strengthening sessions to make sure they understand the benefits of crowdfunding. And since they can't start a crowdfunding platform themselves, we thought of it as a good opportunity to link them with civil society organizations and push for a more collaborative, democratic governance and not just a top-down, you know, I'll keep the politics aside for now, but that's the idea. So linking municipalities with CSOs through crowdfunding. Another very successful intervention was one we had in Tunis, also using the Tadamun platform, where here it was more of an in-depth approach, where along with UNDP colleagues from Tunis, Jordan, Turkey, and Lebanon, I think, We selected a group of CSOs in Tunis, gave them in-depth training sessions over the course of 6 months. We used the Tadamun platform to conduct our sessions and develop modules with the help of experts from different fields, so copywriters, graphic designers, audiovisual experts, what have you. We also offered teaching of trainers, TOTs, to youth groups, thus empowering them to continue strengthening the capacities of other local organizations in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the side of Live Love. If you would like to know more, I'm happy to answer any question. And thanks again, Svetla and UNDP for including us.
Thank you so much, Nabil. As far as I know, also UNDP in the past has launched several campaigns in Lebanon on various issues, which have been successful. So it's a great way to think about how to connect with local platforms as well, in addition to international global platforms. So with the interest of time, I will now go to our fourth speaker. Last but not least, we have with us Gwynne Gauntlett. She's the global lead of digital giving and engagement at UNDP. She's helping to advance UNDP's mission towards achieving the 2030 agenda by piloting new ways to generate alternative funding sources for development. And I'd like to hand over now to Gwynne.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I think you can all see it.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to see so many colleagues today on this webinar. And I want to thank my co-panelists today for sharing their guidance and their best practices and so much good information about crowdfunding and digital giving. I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk more about the UNDP context in terms of digital giving and importantly share, I think we've already seen some questions in the chat about what does it take to partner or work with a digital giving platform provider. So from where I sit corporately within BERA, we have done quite a bit in this space to develop global corporate agreements with 2 platform providers. And I'm happy to say that Allison at every.org is our most recent partner. We have actually just entered into a corporate agreement with every.org within the last couple months, and we're very excited to be working with this organization. It's really a wonderful opportunity for UNDP to be working at the forefront of digital giving. However, I want to say that UNDP is a vast network, as we all know, and we don't necessarily expect to cover every single type of instance or use case across our vast network. So country offices, of course, and regional colleagues are invited and welcome to enter into agreements with local platform providers or regional platform providers based on their specific context. However, as we all know, there are many policies and guidance that needs to be followed in order to do that. So what I'm going to do in the next couple minutes is to take you through some very dense slides, and I'm going to apologize in advance, to share some of the practices that we've put into place on the corporate level so that these learnings can be applied at the local level. I'll just mention as we get started that corporately, what we're attempting to do is really to create digital giving platforms for the UNDP context that are as versatile as possible, that cover as many global requirements as possible, that can be utilized by country offices and other teams, and really with as little oversight as possible needed at the country office level, knowing that those teams are often under-resourced. And really is just keep it as simple and turnkey as possible for country offices. With that said, I'm going to take you through, as a first slide, our fairly complex corporate digital giving architecture. So happy to chat about this at any point after this webinar. But what you can see here, if you follow the blue arrow in the center, is that we really start with the donors. The donors, everyday donors, are coming in to learn about UNDP and how to give to UNDP. And right now we have two possibilities for them corporately to donate. The first, if you just go to the right, is our new relationship with Every.org. We entered into a partnership. And as Allison described, we have a fundraiser currently live on the Every.org website. Every.org also offers an embeddable button that any country office can start their own fundraiser if a chart of account and a campaign exists. And that button can be essentially embedded into any website. So that's option one. Option two is if you follow the donor stream directly down, you'll see that we still do have our classy architecture in place, which is a little bit different approach that allows us to spin up campaign pages in a templated manner. And some of our country offices many have actually worked with the classy platform. And from there, there's a fairly complex payment processing engine tied to our bank account at UNDP, and then ultimately reconciled to our chart of account system, which is, again, all inside baseball, but essentially the funds that are collected, 100% of them minus GMS fees, go back to the project on file through the chart of account. So our goal here is to make this as cost effective as possible, and as easy to implement for country offices as possible, so that they can spend the time actually reaching donors and actually doing the partnership work. So just from this, there are other systems in our MarTech stack that we're connecting to, for example, MailChimp, which we use for email platforms, Google Analytics, which allows us to measure our web pages. We are working with Google Ad Grants. I think Jennan's on the call, who can talk about the success of the time permitting of Google Ad Grants and how we've used that as a marketing tool, free to country offices to promote and surface their campaigns. And then last but not least, we're enabled through Meta platforms to do retargeting and remarketing work, and our CRM platforms with Unity and Salesforce to track our donor data and relationship management. Moving forward, I want to get into a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how a country office might start to think about entering into a partnership or a procurement exercise with a potential digital giving partner. So as you can see here, the private sector resource mobilization toolkit is really focused on developing private sector partnerships, not on procurement-led exercises. However, it does provide a wealth of information, and I would suggest that anyone who wants to start thinking about working with a digital giving platform provider starts here and begins to understand what resources are available. This can also be utilized not just for digital giving platform providers, but also if you're considering bringing on a digital marketing agency to help you with promotion of your campaign. If you're thinking about accepting contributions from private sector organizations, this is the place to start. If you're thinking about bringing on consultants, so you need to start thinking in terms of your planning process on a campaign, how you prioritize and plan, and which processes and policies you'll have to follow based on these initial considerations. The key question to answer from the very start is, what is the business model of the digital giving platform that you're potentially planning to work with? Are they fee-based, as is the case with some of the platforms? Classy, for example, is a fee-based model, or are they free tools? Is it a pro bono relationship? So with Every.org, these tools are free. I believe that Nabil also said that LaunchGood is fee-free, so that would also fall into the pro bono space. I'm not sure, Adel, I think you said the same thing. And so from here, this will really tell you what direction you need to follow. If it's a fee-based, in other words, UNDP will be paying for goods and services, that's a procurement policy exercise. If it's a partnership, then partnership policies apply. The options for formalizing partnerships are really three. For non-financial partnerships, a memorandum of understanding or a simple statement of intent is a potential way to start. And then from there, where there are financial contributions involved, there are financing agreement templates on the private sector toolkit. Above 100K and under 100K, there are also pro bono goods and services standard agreements that are in the same toolkit. From there, if you have decided that you are working in a pro bono situation, in other words, no fees are involved, then what you want to see is whether there is a financial contribution from the digital giving platform. So in the case of every.org, there is a financial contribution. So for that case, there's a comprehensive financing pro bono agreement template. For partnerships that involve in-kind contributions of goods and services that are donated at no cost to UNDP, and there's no financial contribution, there's a very standard pro bono template. In both cases, however, it's important to understand that pro bono policies apply, that there's a separate a policy there, that and there will be a need to show analyses, peer review, value for money, risk mitigation strategies, and importantly, and this is very important, that if you're entering into a pro bono agreement with no financing, that there is no expectation that UNDP will incur costs in the future. So in other words, you cannot enter into a standard pro bono agreement and then have that parlay in the future to require UNDP to pay some sort of fee or costs. That's not an acceptable path forward. Due diligence is an important consideration here, and I wanted to say first of all that UNDP's recent policy revision, which was actually just published a few months ago, is essentially spelling out the requirements for due diligence when it comes to digital giving platform providers. So it does mandate that due diligence is required for any type of partnership, whether it's pro bono, in kind, a donation, a programmatic engagement, and it includes entities such as for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, corporate foundations, business associations, and state-owned enterprises. However, it's very important to know that that most digital giving platform providers are also registered charitable organizations. So I saw that LaunchGood, I think, had a registered charitable number in the UK. Every.org is a 501c3 in the United States. So in these examples where they're registered charitable organizations, the risk profile is typically extremely low. We'll see that that most of these organizations have really passed the bar of having no conflicts and can kind of go very quickly through the risk assessment tool to move forward. It's also important to note that in the due diligence policy, individual donors are actually out of scope. However, the anti-money laundering and the counter-finance terrorism laws are still in effect, and self-certification is required for all partnerships. I just want to note here that as the Every.org partnership was created with compliance of all of these policies in mind, it's really well purposed as positioned as a fit for purpose solution across many digital giving scenarios. Other considerations, just to kind of wrap up, digital giving platform providers must also agree to UNDP's special conditions on cloud computing. A payment processing engine is sometimes required by digital giving processor or platforms. It's important when you're thinking about a campaign about how to use, whether the UNDP logo will be available for use to the platform provider so that they can essentially showcase that they are working with UNDP. Digital giving platforms require very careful administrative and user management, so you want to be very careful about complying with the SOPs out of our unit here in BERA. And then just importantly, if there are any changes requested by the digital giving provider to our general terms and conditions, that those changes must be negotiated through our legal services office. So that's an important point to note, as well as the fact that if changes are needed, the RR may need to sign off as well. So last but not least, when utilizing the UNDP digital corporate platform, so the Every.org platform or Classy platform, the RR must sign off and an active chart of account is required prior to launch. So a lot of rules there, but happy to share any of this information in a separate meeting at any time. And thanks so much, Svetla, for convening this meeting.
Thank you so much, Gwynne. I think this was a super necessary overview of the different processes and the different avenues of working with different platforms that are approved by UNDP, but also if you want to work in a local or regional context, how you can go about doing that. For example, how you could work with a platform like Love Beirut in a local context. So super important. Thank you so much, Gwynne. I think you answered already some of the questions that popped up earlier as people were asking about, what are the different ways that UNDP can work with different platforms. So I think we won't go into those, but in the interest of time, thank you for everyone that stayed on. I think there is one question in the Q&A box that's related to, from Tiffany Sprague. She's asking, how much money does UNDP make through crowdfunding per year? I think we mentioned that at the beginning, that through the Crowdfunding Academy, but maybe we can say like a general number, including at the corporate level. So also through engagement of private sector. Yeah, that's the question.
So most of our work is actually done at the country level. We've mobilized approximately 3 million, a little bit more in the last couple of years through our country office campaigns. As we step up efforts corporately and start to work more closely with, especially high net worth individuals, we hope to at the corporate level definitely increase what we're doing, but to date, we've really been focusing on offering support to country offices through the Crowdfunding Academy and working to mobilize grassroots efforts there.
Thank you so much, Gwynne. I think we've answered most of the questions. I'm worried that we're a bit over time. So perhaps we can do a kind of wrap up last session, maybe last remarks from our wonderful speakers today in terms of, you all mentioned really powerful examples, also tips, which I think everyone has found very useful. But it would be great to hear from you, for example, one last tip on how to, for example, keep a long fundraising campaign going that isn't related to an urgent issue. What would you give, like, last remark to our audience?
I would say, so we're digital platforms and we tend to be swimming in digital data, and it's all quantitative and it's overwhelming. And for fundraisers out there, strongly advise that you take, say, 10, 15 donors and ask them how you're making them feel, right? Do they feel like an ATM machine, or are they getting joy and meaning out of this campaign? And to not be afraid to take your walls down and actually talk to your donors.
Thank you so much, Allison.
I can add to that. Great advice there. I think it's also important in this globalized world. Don't be shy to reach out and leverage and connect and make partnerships, with digital platforms, with UNDP, with other charities or other causes that might be like-minded, but working in a different context, because there's so much that we can all learn from each other. And webinars and meetups like this is just one example of that.
Thank you so much, Adel.
I don't have much more to add to everything that was said, to tell you the truth. I'll just say one thing, that don't get it's difficult to crowdfund. Don't give up. Basically, keep on trying, no matter how difficult it gets. Even though through failures, this is how we reach success.
Thank you, everyone. Well, thanks again for this super insightful session. We have Gwynne, if you want to share any last remarks.
I just want to thank everyone for joining. I agree with all of the panelists. Don't be discouraged. I know that a lot of this seems very dense and difficult, but there are many resources within UNDP to assist and support. So please do not hesitate to get in touch with myself or Svetla or anyone within our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwynne. So just to let everyone know, I'll be sending over recordings, so you'll get access to all this wonderful information that you heard in the last hour, along with the presentations. Also, I've dropped the link once again to the Crowdfunding Academy. If you're interested in learning how to launch your impact giving campaign, please apply by December 20th. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.